Matters, and this is now about the ARVs. Let's switch gears. The Ministry of Health is saying that it's investigating claims that the antiretroviral drugs, which is ARVs, phased out in the country were flagged off by KEMSA last week for distribution to more than 31 counties there. And even though Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe has given assurance that the ARVs held at the port of Mombasa will be released, the United States, through the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, has maintained that America will continue only if the government addresses issues of corruption in KEMSA. Gerard,
I think I saw the update from the State House that Antony Blinken had a meeting with President Uhuru Kenyatta, and one of the partners that have been supplying ARVs to people living with HIV and AIDS in the country has been USAID, and of course I saw the insistence that KEMSA haste, the famous COVID billionaires, that matter has not been addressed. And I think US has been very categorical that KEMSA should not be part of their distribution because, of course, one or two reasons on issues of integrity. And I think as a country, it is very important that when I saw that story on issue of distribution and also some drugs that had not been or had been condemned at some point, it was very unfortunate. So I think the US are very right, and KEMSA, and remember the president gave out some 21 days in 2020, where he said that the DPP had been directed and other investigative agencies, EACC and DCI, to ensure, and I remember also the Senate Health Committee, I think they also in the National Assembly, the PIC, were trying to unravel what really happened with KEMSA. And I think it has tainted the image. And of course, the county governments also have been accusing KEMSA for inefficiency and effectiveness in terms of drug distribution. So I think I want to say that it is important that we do an overhaul with KEMSA, because the more we allow KEMSA to be dysfunctional and inefficient and moribund in terms of doing its work, it is very unfortunate. So I agree with the US that and it shows that there is something wrong with our country, because now if you see donors now wanting to dictate on how they will be distributing, then it means our corruption is so chronic and cancerous that and it is also my advice that any person who would want to donate to Kenya, he should come and do it personally, because some people, that donation might not reach to the intended purpose, because most of the people you find, most of them will be the donees because they have specific interests. When you are planning to donate something to the poor, they become poor at that point. Yeah. So I agree with them, and we hope we appeal to government and EACC and DCI, and I want to call upon the president and the advisors of the president. I know Senator Kimani Wamatangi has the ear of the president. He should whisper that last year, sometimes back, he directed 21 days to issue of KEMSA to be addressed once and for all, so that we can reclaim the integrity. Because the more we push and pull, then it is very unfortunate. And on the issue of condemned drugs or that should not be used in the country, I think our regulation regime is so poor. And I've said before, even on the floor of the Senate, that the regulatory body that we have, in terms of business, even the Competition Authority of Kenya, just like you remember, there is a famous case where Google has been sued by Australian anti-competition authority, sued Google on behalf of the public of Australia. So it shows that Competition Authority of Kenya and other agencies of regulatory within the country are not doing their work as should be. The Kenya Bureau of Statistics are not doing the work as it should be. So when you find that some drugs that has been blacked off are still in circulation, then there is something wrong with our country. And when the donors like USAID become cautious in terms of dealing with government agencies, then it looks that there is something wrong. And I hope the necessary agencies, the Ministry of Health and the necessary agencies should address these things once for all. But finally, it's unfortunate that most Kenyans did suffer because of delayed supply of ARVs. And I saw the chairperson of the Council of Governors in terms of health, Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, came out boldly and I spoke about it. I saw also the MP for Seme also came out in the floor of the National Assembly But I think the Senate Health Committee also should pick up, and it is good my majority whip is here.
Yeah.
He should issue those instructions to the necessary health committee so that it can be handled once and for all.
Omotangi Cherargei has mentioned you twice, so
Yes.
they'll just come to you for the reply also and on this issue of ARVs.
You know, Cherargei is my friend, and in many ways, so we have a good history. So he's more likely to mention me. Only I would ask him to be mentioning more me in good light. But you know, Trevor, I think this exposes our shame, if you ask me, as a country. It is inconceivable, it's unfathomable. I've said this many times here before, that 30 years plus since we had the first cases of HIV diagnosed in Kenya, and we know the history, we've got medical experts, that still in our scheme of things, in our plan, that we plan even today to depend more on donations than what we can do for ourselves. Even first put aside even the question of research and self-dependency on production of those drugs, or even more innovative ways, for example. And I was looking at a caption yesterday where one of the countries, one of the Western African countries, was agitating to get one of the partners who are supplying them with the coronavirus vaccine to start manufacturing in their country in West Africa. I can't remember exactly which country. Yesterday.
Ghana.
That was Ghana.
Yes.
Now, and then imagine that's about corona just the other day, and the country is thinking that, you know, how are we best off? We would need to innovate and think quickly and maybe manufacture this. I can't personally bear to think about what have we been doing with our health sector and ministry if these are not some of the priorities that they would have as of today put in place, and say, can't we, for example, get one of these manufacturers, all of those, you know, Pfizer and who, and then localize this thing. And we know that this is a pandemic that is going to be with us for a while, you know, the HIV virus. And even if it is not for us, we could even become the distribution and manufacturing hub for East Africa, you know, for the cases in Uganda and Tanzania, because they're there, and all over in Rwanda and other places. And I think this is just another example of that closed mind thinking, whereby we just want to stretch our hands and not use our potential and our thoughts well. I don't think I would have kind words, you know, for those that have sat in this ministry, because once you are given the responsibility to go and see that ministry, think like a leader. I mean, offer solutions, long-term and immediate and sustainable. Because if you listen to this whole story about what happened since the drugs got impounded and delayed, and there's been push and pull, I mean, people have been dying, complications of HIV, infected patients worsening, and some of them even losing their lives. It is a shame, Trevor, today, that anyone should lose their lives in Kenya out of complications of HIV, whereas countries where this scourge started, for example, you go to countries who report 0 cases of HIV today in the world. I mean, we are still there. So I think I want to say very, very firmly to our friends in the Ministry of Health, help this country. Don't wait to always be acting and be seen when there is crisis. Lastly, is on this issue of corruption. And finally, I hope that it will come to our conscience, all of us. We can't not continue the way we have been. Everything where you see that there's a public you know, facility, then the first thing that those that get there is how they're going to put their hands in the kitty. To the extent that we have become an international embarrassment, that people who are not selling to you, they are giving you, donors, for free, that you even won't think how you're going to pilfer, steal, get, sell for your own sake. It is embarrassing. It's very, very embarrassing.
All right. Otiende, this issue now, are they allowed to dictate which vehicle should carry this? Because the USAID had said that they want Chemonex to be the one to distribute and not KEMSA.
Let's start with where you started, the original question, the question that there were some ARVs which had been phased out and which were allowed to be distributed to 31 counties. I think that is the height of recklessness, and that, in fact, would be criminal. And that indeed is the reason why we have the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. That would mean there was a lapse of supervision which must lead to criminal consequences. both within KEMSA and within the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. Anything that has been phased out, it means it is no longer authorized for use or distribution. And if you do, it is a criminal offense. And that must just be followed up as such. But it also speaks to a very fundamental issue. We have been given to the drum at KEMSA, and my colleagues in PIC every day keep calling people, and you know, it's like an Afro cinema. The amount of money spoken about do not seem to mirror the people who appear before that committee. Clearly meaning those are just fronts. And whether we will get to the bottom of it or not, I don't know. What is clear, though, is that if we wanted to get to the bottom of it, by now we'd have been seeing prosecutions. Because the fact that there's an inquiry by Parliament does not preclude criminal prosecution for those responsible. And my conclusion is that a year and more down the line, we have not seen any signs of anyone going to being taken to court. We won't see any. But the more fundamental issue is we are also not doing anything about the structure of KEMSA. The lapses that led to what we are seeing are still intact and in place. And in fact, some of those who are there are being rewarded with further appointments. And it means we are not about to see any structural reconstruction. Yeah. And that's what we need. It is that structural reconstruction that is allowing people to question the authority of KEMSA to do certain things. It is what's leading to the kind of lapses that we're now talking about. Yeah. But when now we come to this alleged standoff between USAID and the US government and the Kenya government, I think it is not as straight as one might want to put it. I think you must assign blame both sides. Yeah. The US government, it might be aid, but brings in ARVs through a private entity and then demands waiver of tax waiver of, I think, 100 million or something like that. And that causes a standoff for some time. The government then reluctantly agrees to waive that tax. But then now, in addition to that, one would expect, usually, that if there's such an instance of tax waiver and all, and it is a donation to us and the people of Kenya, then the question of distribution would be controlled by the government. Yeah. But here is a situation where you have donated all right. You ought to pay tax because you've done it through a private entity, not through the usual government channels, and then you demand that tax be waived. But then once it's waived, you also insist that the distribution must be done by a private entity. It's not a government, a US government entity, it's not USAID itself, it's not a Kenya government entity, but a private entity. I think it's called Chemonics. Yeah. Now it's a bit complex because when you Google Chemonics, you see there's even a Kenyan company called Chemonics International Kenya Limited. Sometimes, and I have been privy to situations where even donations from other governments or donations from the UN or other international organizations, sometimes when they involve private players, there are also questions of private profit. And so the Kenya government is also legitimate in insisting that if you have brought this for the aid of Kenyans, and if you've insisted that we waive tax, then we must have a say on the distribution. Yeah. So I think both sides are right, but there's also blame both sides. I would suggest that this is one of those instances where if it is believed that KEMSA does not have the integrity to distribute these ARVs, then perhaps this is a situation where you should have a special task force comprising of some national government official and some county government officials, including even USAID officials, which then would oversee this. That would be my thinking. But lastly, on the same page where we are talking about the flights from India, I think page 7 of the Nation, there's also the question of the undying question of the Sputnik vaccine.
It is back again.
It is the undying question because it demonstrates the lapses. And, you know, I think I shared with you when I wrote to them, and I shared with you that they responded. Yeah. And I shared it even on my Twitter account. And the curious things about their response, and I'm still debating what to do about it, it discloses 3 things when the Pharmacy and Poisons Board responded to me. First, they approved the vaccine on the very same day the application was made. on 12th of March, I mean, that's just curious. Approving a vaccine is a process that I do not know how you can anticipate that an application will be made. You convene a meeting and you approve it and write a letter the same day. Secondly, they admit that it has not been approved by the World Health Organization. But they equally admit that as the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, they did not undertake any process or procedures as would enable them, approve it. But then thirdly, curiously, they say that as far as they are concerned, all necessary trials were done by the manufacturer. I mean, that's an answer as if to say, anyone who claims to have a vaccine, just bring it. Because not everyone who produces anything like a vaccine will have undertaken some trials.
Yeah.
But it also demonstrates the lapse and laxity at the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. I think in this area of regulation of drugs and poisons, we are on very thin ice.
Okay. Dr. Mutua?
I think my colleagues have said quite a bit on this issue. Let me start by talking about some of the things that have been pointed out by Senator Matangi. He keeps on sounding more and more like a very good running mate for somebody I know. Very, very good, very, very open-minded and very, very good ideas. So, you know, what is happening with this KEMSA issue is an indicator of what is happening in our country. It is not about ARVs or KEMSA, it's about us as a country. Where are we and where are we supposed to go and what are the challenges they're facing? Senator Matangi pointed out how in 2013, I called in investors. We had investors coming 2.1 trillion shillings and to start a new city and hospitals and things to get the country moving and provide over 500,000 jobs. What happened to the Kenyan system? The National Land Commission with its bureaucracy and then Senator of Machakos, Mudhama, went to court and there was an injunction for 6 years. So we couldn't move to allocate land to actually get the investors coming here. Those investors got tired of waiting. They went to Rwanda, they went to South Africa, they went elsewhere. What is happening? We are suffering today as a Kenya, as a country, because we would have had superb hospitals and things put up, but the judicial system was very slow, and we'll talk about that when we talk about the appointment of Martha Koome. So what we are seeing is a problem that we have as a people of Kenya. Now, there are three things here. One, there's the issue of the US dictating to us and saying it has to go through here. Why? Because according to the Americans, KEMSA is tainted. It's tainted because of all the scandals that KEMSA have had. They don't want to deal with a tainted organization. So what other organizations can we give them? And we have many organizations in this country that we can give them and tell them, okay, we don't want you to bring it through a private entity. Here is another government agency, it can come through. Have we had that conversations with the Americans? Because I don't think the Americans are pushing it to come through a private entity because they want to support that private entity. Yeah. It's basically because they don't trust KEMSA. And they don't trust the Kenyans who are running KEMSA as an organization. Yeah. Number two, it's a question we ask ourselves, do you have a plan B? You know, it's called a dependent syndrome. When I worked on my PhD, I had a chapter on dependency. You know, this issue of depending, you know, we depend on the Bretton Woods institutions. Now we are depending on the ARVs, as Senator Matangi has asked. After all these years, what about us? Could we be manufacturing our own ARVs here in the country? You know, we have the ability to do it. Yeah. We have the capacity. Here I've attracted investors in Machakos, and they have put up pharmaceutical plants, and they're manufacturing out of things. So we have this mentality in our head of always thinking that our solutions come from outside. So what has been our plan B? Has it always been just the Americans? What if the Americans close their borders and they need their issues? It's a problem. And finally, what are we learning in terms of all these things? And that is, healthcare is very important to our people. You look at the situation in India, you look at the ARVs and everything, healthcare is critical. Senator Matangi talked about cancer. In Machakos, I've put up a Machakos Cancer Center. I'm the only county to have a Machakos Cancer Center, and I provide 100% universal health care. Yeah. So you can be treated with community hospitals and ambulances and improvement, because health is critical. But health is also important if the national government is also thinking about us being dependent on ourselves, not depending on other people. And so I was in a meeting, I'll not say where this issue of vaccines came up, and that India is going to has stopped giving our vaccines. And I floated the idea. And I said, why don't we put up, you know, I've got factories in Machakos, and they make medicines for injection, you know. Why don't we ask AstraZeneca to give us a license so that we could produce the vaccine here, and President Uhuru Kenyatta can distribute to other African nations, alafu kikiumana Kenya afunge vile India amefunga. You know, I was brushed aside. I was told, no, iwezekani, you know, it can't be done, no, long process, let's wait, they are going to produce J&J in South Africa, we don't have the capacity. You know, it's a frame of thinking. It's a frame of thinking. And we need to get into what I call my Mandeleo chap-chap thinking of self-dependency and doing things for ourselves without depending on other people. So what is happening with the ARV saga, which is very, very painful, is basically the chickens coming home to roost, to quote Malcolm X. Sisi ndio tumejiumiza sisi wenyewe. All these years, we should be producing them here. All these years, we should have plan B, plan C. All this time, we should be dependent on ourselves, not depending on other people.
This 6-year injunction on the land use in Machakos, has it been lifted, or is it still an ongoing?
No, it was lifted. It was lifted. And then, you know, the sad thing is this. When it was lifted, I had gone all over the world. I had, for example, there's the tallest building in the world called the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. I brought the chairman of the company called Emar that has built Dubai Mall and a lot of infrastructure in Dubai to Machakos. He sat in my office. He went and sat at the People's Park. He was so impressed. And he wanted 200 to 300 acres. And he was going to build a highway and everything. And even, you know, these people actually brought their money to Kenya, ready to start. We didn't start. By the time it was lifted, I sent him the allotment letter. He sent it back. He had already split his money to Angola and to Uganda. Those are Kenyan jobs that went there. There was a company called Ashok Leyland. Najua zile Leyland zile basi zamani. Ashok Leyland, actually this was given to me by the president of Kenya. You know, he referred the chairman of Ashok Leyland to me. And we gave them 20 acres to build a plant and employ our people in Machakos. He ended up building it, I think, in Egypt because of the delay. Nesto Foods, they built in South Africa. So basically, 500,000 to 1 million jobs that could have formed in Kenya went to other places because of bad politics. The people who took the case to court would not take the case to court because they wanted to get justice. No, they wanted to stop Mutua. They thought, you know, Mutua akienda speedy sana, siku moja anaweza kuwa president wa Kenya, tumkanyagie chini, you know? And basically they think, but Mutua, I'm okay. It's a people, the thousands and now millions of unemployed youth in our country are suffering because people cannot open their minds to better ideas that improve all of us. Okay,
I have to take a quick break here on Daybreak. When we come back, we talk about the issue of rush to install COM, and that's what they're saying on the Daily Paper, on the Daily Nation. Actually, that's their headline. Hurried or not, we'll find out in just a bit. Keep your views coming at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. See you in a bit.